newly recruited fighters to Sirte in Libya to fight alongside the forces of the government of the National Accord against General Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army. Turkey sent about 400 fighters to Libya last week, while about 250 others returned to Syria, bringing the total number of Syrian mercenaries sent to Libya to 16,500. A report published by the Pentagon said that Turkey has sent between 3,500 and 3,800 Syrian fighters to back the GNA over the first 3 months of the year. Turkey has long wanted to alter the old boundaries, and its drive gained urgency as Egypt, Israel, and Cyprus moved to exploit newly discovered natural gas fields in their waters. Turkey's moves, particularly its claim on Greek waters, have heightened tensions between the two NATO members who openly clashed 46 years ago in the conflict over Cyprus. Turkey has long had interest in Libya, mainly construction and energy projects. It has also been pressing for new business opportunities and recouping losses sustained since Gaddafi was pushed from power. Back home in Turkey, Erdogan has always made use of crisis to consolidate his power. Erdogan has cracked down on opposition and attempted to undermine its effectiveness as well. We'll talk about this with our esteemed panelists on the show. Joining me is Ambassador Ashok Shahjanhar, former diplomat, Major General Dhruv Katoch, Defense and Strategic Affairs expert, Director of the India Foundation as well, Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, and Sumit Peer, last but not the least, political analyst, also joins us on this development coming in from the World Platform. Professor Nalapat, let me come to you first. Well, Turkey has been behaving in the most odd of ways in the last few days. Right from rubbing India the wrong way, that camaraderie that they want to strike up with Pakistan and Malaysia, and now, having this expansionistic drive, perhaps galvanized by China, is something which could see the entire area, be topsy-turvy.
Well, I'd like to say that Erdogan has been following a pretty consistent policy by his definition. And basically, it is a Wahhabi policy. Erdogan is very much part of the Wahhabi group. And you're right, he is more and more closer to China, although there are differences with Russia, for example, in Libya. In Libya, I think the reasons are basically twofold. One is that the so-called internationally recognized government is actually the more extremist groups are backing that government. The more moderate groups are backing General Haftar, who is supposed to be outside the purview of the UN recognized government. It's a very interesting situation. And Turkey has basically placed its bets on the group that has got a lot of extremist fighters, including a lot of fighters supported by Turkey. But I think the most important reason is oil. You will recall that there have been a lot of reports about oil from ISIS controlled territory in the past flowing through into Turkey and being resold. And I think that has been a source of a lot of money to a lot of influential Turks. And I think the same thing they're looking forward from Libya, because don't forget, Libya has been one of the main oil producers in the world. So I think the main thing is the oil, followed by the desire to consolidate Wahhabism in the region.
Ambassador Shahjanhar, Turkey has had an image. Turkey has, in fact, capitalized and banked on that image for a very long time. It's a tourist hub. It's considered to be, the center of the world because of its strategic locations between three continents. Do you think all of this is perhaps being compromised by the theocratic ambitions of Mr. Erdogan?
You're right. But I think it doesn't really matter all that much to Erdogan because he is driven by personal ambition. He is driven by personal hubris. And I think that is evident. He is following his own agenda. As has been mentioned by Professor Nalapat, as you had also mentioned, he basically also wants to take the leadership of the Muslim Ummah. So that is why he has been trying to create a center of power that is outside Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And that is why he is jockeying with Pakistan, he's jockeying with Malaysia, which are countries far away from here. And to his credit, so to say, one could mention that he has, as far as the condition of the Uyghur Muslims in China is concerned, he has not been, particularly supportive of that. He has been reasonably critical of that. So I think even to the extent of giving the devil his due, he, like many of the other leaders of West Asia, have been supportive of China, that what China is doing with Uyghur Muslims. Erdogan has not gone that far. But he has been trying, whether it is engaging in Syria, as was mentioned by Professor Nalapat, the oil that was being mined by the Islamic State, and it was being sent through Turkey to the Mediterranean ports. And actually, that was one of the reasons when Russia had entered into this fight in 2015, September 2015. They were the ones, their aircrafts are the ones which were bombing these convoy of trucks that were carrying the oil from Iraq, northern parts of Iraq and Syria. So basically, it is his personal ambition. He is supporting the UN-backed government, but he also realizes that in this context, he is against Russia, because Russia is supporting General Haftar, who really controls much more of the territory in Libya than the GNA government based in Tripoli. So I think he is going there to advance his ambitions, but there are very many challenges in the way. I don't think there is any easy way out, as there was no easy way out in Syria. So I don't think there is easy way out here, but he has exaggerated thoughts and ideas of Turkey's power, Turkey's heft, and it is basically to get control of larger quantities of oil that he has been reaching out to Libya.
Absolutely. And Sumit, this is also turning out to be a hotbed for a lot of trouble. Obviously, Turkey has things to exploit in the Mediterranean, and they want Libya's help. But Libya itself is divided, and there are also reports of Russia, helping out some of the insurgents. If this conflict, sees the next level, then there could be a lot of trouble in that part of the world, because Greece is obviously going to be supported by the European powers, and then you have Turkey and Libya, which will find more solidarity, with other nations which have been supporting or have come up to speak in favor of Turkey and Libya right after Gaddafi was killed in 2011.
The point here is that what we see Turkey today has completely changed from what Mustafa Kemal Atatürk thought it. Today, look at the demographics of territory. More than 99.5% is already Muslim. So the minorities do not exist in Turkey anymore. They have been for 6-7%. Today, we can say it's a 100% Muslim country. Just for the sake of argument, I'm saying 99.5%. Look at their population, 84 million, GDP of 0.8 trillion, growing at a rate of 2% for last 3-4 years. And incidentally, their major export is trucks and armed vehicles, but oil comes number 3rd in the list, which is approximately 5% of the GDP. And inflation, we need, incidentally, is 12 to 15%. So why I'm giving the economic conditions of the Turkey, that economically Turkey is in shambles, especially after the Donald Trump said that, I'm going to teach them a lesson. So in this new situation, what is the easiest low-lying fruit for Turkey is the oil. Where is the oil? Oil is around the Greek islands, and oil is in the Libya. And incidentally, Turkey and Libya both do not sign UNCLS. So what they have done, they have unilaterally decided to divide the sea between them, which includes a lot of Greek islands, which we talk about them. They are ignoring the exclusive economic zones around these islands. They are ignoring all the Greek islands. The idea is to get oil, because that oil will be used to regenerate the Turkish economy. And of course, they have been backed by China now. There's another factor. If you look at the General Iftikhar, he's backed by Russians, he's backed by Egyptians also, he's backed by UAE also. And Erdogan is trying to get his hat into the ring, because again, Libya produces some of the best oil in the world, and it's one of the fifth biggest producer of the oil. So there is oil in Libya, there is oil in Mediterranean, there is oil around Greeks, and Erdogan is the person who is eyeing this. And the problem with Turkey is it talks pro-West. It's a part of NATO, but it practices Islamism. It practices what Professor Nalapat rightly said, Wahhabism. And Erdogan is seeing himself as the new Khalifa of the so-called Ottoman Empire, and he wants to have that Ummah and the leadership. But the problems are much deeper than that. His problem is economy. He cannot sustain Turkey at this rate. So he's looking literally to steal oil from wherever he can, It includes sending mercenaries, sending arms, sending everything. But his problem is he's up against a very, very powerful Russia. He's against Egypt and against UAE. So it's not going to be easy work for Erdogan. But the fact remains he has no options. He'll go for it. Even he will sleep with the Chinese if it helps. And that's what he's literally doing.
And General Katoch, this deal, in fact, achieves something which Turkey wanted, the deal between Turkey and Libya. There's something that Turkey wanted for the longest time. They needed a partner. They needed backup for their claims in the Mediterranean. And obviously, they found such a partner in Libya.
You see, what Turkey is pursuing, as has been brought out by my colleagues earlier, it is what they call the Blue Homeland Doctrine. Now, when we talk about the Blue Homeland Doctrine, we are talking about control over the waters in the Mediterranean and in the Aegean Sea. Now, that is where these island territories are. Now, they want control over those islands, which ipso facto gives them control over the energy resources and other mineral resources which lie in the ocean floor. Now, this deal which they've had with Libya, they will be giving them military assistance for a period of 1 year. Starting from January of 2020. They've already provided them assistance in terms of intelligence, in terms of UAVs, and now the Syrian mercenaries are coming. The Turkish Syrians have been coming, and they are in their thousands. I don't think this is really going to work, actually, because when we are looking at a military conflict which Turkey is engaged in now, which is very far from their shores, it is very unlikely to work in a scenario like Libya, where the eastern half, the majority of that area which is on the eastern half, is under the control of General Haftar, and it is being supported by Egypt. Please remember, even France is giving support to Haftar, and France is a NATO country. Russia is giving them support. So UAE is giving them support. On the other side, of course, is ranged, there are certain other groups which are ranged there, including Iran and basically Turkey is the major player, but Iran is supporting Turkey in this particular case. Now, this land warfare, I do not see it coming to any sort of conclusion in the near future. Neither party, I think, is strong enough to take it. But I think what has really happened with these Syrian mercenaries coming in is for the General Haftar to actually destroy the GNA. And the GNA is actually so we have got a very confusing situation here, where the UN has actually got onto a side which is being supported by various radical groups with Wahhabi intent. So I don't see any quick closure to this particular problem, and I think it's going to fare like this for quite some time to come.
Right, Professor Nalapa, do you think that Turkey is actually playing a game of military brinkmanship, and it's opened a lot of fronts for itself?
Well, I'd like to say that they are playing for real, and they are playing for high stakes, as has been expertly put forward by my co-panelists here. I would like to say that the problem facing the Turks is, for a long time, they have been caring, feeding, and training very fanatic fighters. In fact, hundreds of thousands of them, from Syria, from Libya, from Iraq, from various locations, including Pakistan, if I may say so, and even Afghanistan, including quite possibly Indonesia, Southeast Asia. Now, the point is, these people are there, they are armed, they are dangerous, and very frankly, they don't recognize any kind of boundaries, including the Turkish boundary. One day, these groups are going to come around and bite Turkey. But what is happening is, in the meantime, Erdogan wants to keep them busy. So he has to create new theaters for them to operate in. And now Libya is one such theater. I mean, the government, the UN-backed government, I don't know why the UN is backing that government, has got a pretense of being a moderate government. It is completely, the people who are fighting for it are totally not moderate. Haftar's people are the ones who are the moderates. But the reality is, in my view, this government is going to enjoy metamorphosis very soon. And Turkey is going to try and get these Syrian fighters into the government, the way Pakistan is trying to get the Taliban into the Kabul government. And then you're going to see a further situation. And frankly, in my view, the long run, it is General Haftar, because whether it's the Libyan people or the Afghan people, they are sick and tired of these extremists. So eventually, I think you're going to see the moderate forces win. But not before you have a fairly grinding conflict in which these fighters are going to be put to the use, of which Turkey has trained them for.
Ambassador Sajjan, how would you categorize and classify Russia's presence in this conflict?
Well, Russia has been with General Haftar and they have been supportive. And as we can see, with the support of Russia and with the support of Egypt, which is a next door power, and also the United Arab Emirates, the territory that is controlled by General Haftar, that has been expanding. Actually, if you were to look at the map, it is on the northwestern tip only that the GNA holds sway. Otherwise, much of the country, and Libya is a large country, much of the country is really controlled by General Haftar. Maybe in the south and southeast, there are some pockets, some extended territorial piece of land there where some other extremist militias are holding sway. But by and large, majority of the country is under the sway of General Haftar. And most of the countries would really, because, and Russia is supporting him, and Russia has been supporting the winning sides. We have seen it in Syria, we are seeing it here. If it was not for the provision in the UN agreement that no military officer, not military personnel would take over the government in Tripoli, I think General Haftar would have been there and he would have been acceptable to most of the people there also. But he has disqualified himself by being a general of the army. He was very thick with Gaddafi, but then they fell apart in the 1980s, and he's been sort of holding he was holding an opposition group against Gaddafi. So he finds it is his turn now, but under the agreement, under the UN-backed agreement, there is no way that under the current circumstances he'll be able to get there. But he definitely has control over most of the territory as far as Libya is concerned.
Sumit, Greece and Turkey have come very close to war thrice, if I can remember correctly, since 1974. But a lot has changed since then. The European Union has newer agreements, there are newer policies, and if Turkey does plan an offensive on Greece, it's going to have to contend with a lot more than just Greece.
Vinny, the point here is that Turkey has changed its policy. Now the new Islamist policy, what Erdogan has taken, it comes at zero resistance and no cost. He is not facing any resistance within the Turkey for this policy, what I have maintained. Now, what makes the thing complex is the Chinese influence, because now Chinese are supporting Erdogan. Erdogan needs money, his economy is in shambles at 2%, and with this kind of economy, he cannot sustain Turkey, he cannot sustain his empire. The word is empire. Now with Chinese coming up, they suddenly see there is Libyan oil, there is the Greek oil, and there are these 6,000 Greek islands, out of which 5,800 are inhabited. Only 600 are uninhabited. So 200 are inhabited. So there's a lot of islands, there's a lot of oil in which China has interest. China will support Erdogan, and Erdogan will keep on creating theater in Libya. So with the Chinese coming into the equation, that angle has bit changed. So Russians are also worried because of the Chinese influence. But incidentally, both of them, Greece and, Turkey, both are NATO members in 1952. And European Union, including France, Germany, has made their stand clear. They are opposed his interference with the Greek, islands, exploration near the Greek islands. So what I see broadly, that he's getting a lot of resistance from EU, even around the Greece. And he's facing a lot of resistance from Russians when he's meddling into the affairs of Libya. And this Fayez Sarraj is a weak person. He is not the person who's going to hold the Libya together. So everybody is looking for Libyan oil and the oil in between. Now it's a question, who gets what? But definitely after China entering the equation, we need, things have changed, because suddenly it gives Erdogan the much needed money, arms, weapons, and aid, what he needs right now to keep the theater on.
General Katoch, Turkey perhaps is not deterred by sanctions. They find confidence in the fact that China is backing them now. But what kind of a trouble is Erdogan going to be in? If the United States as well as Europe, decide to not call his bluff.
You see, I think Erdogan will be in very serious trouble if the United States really gets into the picture and starts placing sanctions on Turkey. when I'm looking into this particular picture, what support can the Chinese give him? He doesn't require the weapons really. He's got enough weapons. How many weapons do you need to arm the insurgents? Right. So that is really not much of an issue. Money, yes. I think ultimately, when push comes to shove, you're looking at a conflict on the seas and over the air. It is not going to be so much on the land. He's going to restrict it to pushing in these insurgents as much as he can, right? Pushing in the insurgents, arming them, and then financing them. Otherwise, they won't fight. Each of them is a mercenary. He's fighting for money. If push comes to shove and you're looking into a naval battle or an aerial battle, I think Turkey will will actually be a loser, especially if you're trying to wage a battle in Libya. Libya, all the advantages actually with the Haftar forces, because his neighbor to the east is Egypt. And it is much easier for Egypt to provide military support to Haftar than it is for Turkey to provide that military support to the government of national accord, which he is supporting. If you are looking into the conflict spreading wider over the Aegean and into the Mediterranean, as a naval battle and an air battle, I think again Erdogan will get the long end of the stick. It is not going to benefit him very greatly. In my view, he will try to avoid all those conflicts and restrict his affairs to the use of terrorist groups to promote his personal interests, both for oil exploration as well as to keep him in power in Turkey.
Absolutely. And Professor Nalapat, we'll conclude with a thought from you. In the midst of the pandemic and in the midst of this confluence building against China, where China in fact is perhaps reconsidering its stance on a number of things. Do you think another conflict in this part of the world is basically going to destabilize things even further, and perhaps instead of picking up arms, powers should come together in a conversation mode and perhaps talk to these leaders and make them understand the value of peace and the value of normalcy?
Well, Vineet, I'd like to say that I think the world is heading to a much more volatile phase. And I'd like to say Erdogan is using the old tactic of the Wahhabis, which is pretending to speak on behalf of the entire Muslim people. And this is why Europe, for example, United States, for example, is hesitating to apply pressure on him. In America, the House of Representatives voted unanimously for sanctions on Erdogan. The Senate, there's an overwhelming majority for sanctions. But Mitch McConnell, the right-hand man of Donald Trump, who's the House Majority Leader in the Senate, is blocking those sanctions essentially because of the influence of the Wahhabi International. So Erdogan is hoping that the Wahhabi International, with all their money, with all their influence, and plus his secret allies across the world, including China, will get him out of trouble. But the reality is he's survived so far because of the lack of action by the United States and the European Union against a country which is openly going against their interests.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of the show.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.